What the hell are you doing here? Maxwell Harrington's sharp voice echoed through the empty restaurant lounge at 3 o'clock in the morning, making the young woman at the corner table look up from the thick law books scattered across the polished oak surface. Elena Johnson, a 25-year-old waitress, remained seated with unsettling calm, her small desk lamp illuminating chapters on constitutional law. Around her, trays, glasses, and folded napkins showed that her shift had ended hours ago. Yet here she was, studying as though the five-star restaurant of a billionaire was her private library. "Mr. Harrington," she said in a controlled voice that stirred something unexpected in him. "I finished all my duties. I was just taking a moment to study before heading home." Maxwell descended the marble staircase with deliberate steps, his silk robe clashing with the simple black uniform of a server. At 48, he had built a hospitality empire by reminding people of their place. And a waitress buried in law books clearly didn't know hers. "Study?" He laughed with contempt. "Do you have any idea where you are? This isn't a classroom. It's my property. I pay you to serve food, not play lawyer." Elena slowly closed her book, unafraid, unshaken. Elena placed her pen neatly inside the open textbook before closing it with a soft thud. The act wasn't rushed. It was deliberate, quietly defiant. She slid her battered second-hand notebook into her bag, then looked up at Maxwell with eyes that no longer seemed meek. "With all due respect, sir, I've completed all the work. The lounge is spotless, just as I always leave it." Her calmness only fueled Maxwell's irritation. For nearly a year, Elena had been invisible to him, another uniform, another nameless worker serving drinks and disappearing into the background. But to see her now, hunched over legal codes, as if she had the audacity to dream beyond her station, it ignited something ugly in his chest. He leaned closer, using his height to intimidate. "Listen carefully," he hissed. "People like you have a place in society. Don't pretend you're more than you are. It's pathetic." Something shifted in Elena's eyes. It wasn't rage, it was sharper, colder. A quiet certainty that made Maxwell's smirk falter. "People like me," she repeated slowly, savoring each syllable. "Interesting perspective, Mr. Harrington." And in that moment, he had no idea that the young woman he belittled had already collected secrets too dangerous to be ignored. Maxwell straightened, his jaw tight, unwilling to let a waitress look at him as though she knew something he didn't. He had built his empire on control, and this insolence felt like a crack in the glass. "You're fired," he said with cold finality. "Pick up your things and leave immediately. And don't even dream of asking for a reference." Elena rose slowly, gathering her books with the same composure she had shown while studying. She tucked her worn copy of constitutional law into her bag and adjusted the strap across her shoulder. At the door, she turned back, a faint, enigmatic smile touching her lips. "Mr. Harrington," she said evenly, her voice echoing against the marble and glass, "have you ever heard the saying about never underestimating those who are always watching?" The words hung in the air like smoke, unsettling him in a way he couldn't explain. For years, employees had obeyed, bowed, disappeared. But this young woman, left the room with an air of quiet confidence, as though she carried something far heavier than textbooks. Maxwell dismissed the thought with a shake of his head. She was just a waitress. Nothing more. Or so he believed. While Maxwell Harrington raged in his penthouse office the next morning, Elena Johnson sat quietly in a modest corner of the city's public library. She wasn't crying over losing her job. She wasn't even surprised. Instead, she was doing something far more dangerous, organizing. On the table before her lay months of carefully filed notes, photographs, and records. During nearly a year at Harrington's restaurant, Elena had been more than a server. She had been an observer. She had overheard business calls taken carelessly in private dining rooms, glimpsed contracts abandoned on counters, watched discreet envelopes exchange hands between Maxwell and his partners. What he didn't know was that Elena wasn't just a waitress with big dreams. She held a law degree from State University, where she had graduated top of her class while working 2 jobs to support her widowed mother and younger brother. After sending out resumes for months, she had received only polite rejections, not the right fit, better suited elsewhere. She had realized then that doors for people like her weren't locked, they were welded shut. So she found another way in. By applying for the waitress position, she gained exactly what she needed, access. And now, she had evidence. Maxwell Harrington adjusted his cufflinks as his assistant, Claire, entered his office with a troubled look. He was still basking in the smug satisfaction of having dismissed the insolent waitress, recounting the story to colleagues as if it were a private joke. "Mr. Harrington," Claire said carefully, "the staff agency called this morning. They want to know why Elena Johnson was let go. Apparently, she was their highest-rated employee. Customers often mentioned her by name in positive reviews." Maxwell scoffed, waving a hand. "She didn't know her place. I caught her studying law books in my restaurant at 3 in the morning. Can you imagine? A server, pretending she's meant for more." Claire hesitated. "Do you know what kind of material she was studying?" "I don't care if it was a cookbook or courtroom transcripts," Maxwell snapped, slamming his fist on the desk. "Employees don't study in my establishment. They serve." But beneath his anger, unease gnawed. That look Elena had given him, calm, steady, certain, refused to leave his mind. For the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar, the creeping suspicion that he might have underestimated the wrong person. And Elena? She was just getting started. At the library, Elena spread her documents across the table, photographs of contracts, handwritten notes on suspicious payments, dates of closed-door meetings. Each piece was meticulously catalogued, every detail cross-checked against public records. She wasn't just gathering scraps, she was building a case. "Excuse me," a cautious voice interrupted. Elena looked up to see a young man in his late 20s, wearing a plain shirt and carrying a reporter's notepad. "My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm an investigative journalist. I overheard Maxwell Harrington bragging at the country club about firing a waitress who was studying law books." Elena studied him in silence, her guarded expression betraying little. "And why does that matter to you?" Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Because I've been trying to expose him for 2 years. Bribery, fraud, rigged contracts, you name it. But I've never had access inside his circle. Someone who worked close to him, though." Elena's hand lingered on her notebook before she slowly opened it, revealing the organized chaos of evidence. Daniel's eyes widened. "This is enough to shake the city." For the first time, Elena allowed a small, knowing smile. "Then let's make sure it does." For the next several weeks, Elena and Daniel worked in near secrecy. Every evening after her family believed she was out job hunting, she met Daniel at the library. Together, they verified each document she had collected during her shifts at Harrington's restaurant. A ledger listing inflated consulting fees turned out to be cleverly disguised bribes. Emails recovered from discarded printouts linked Maxwell to city officials who granted him building permits at record speed. Photographs of late-night meetings matched dates of suspicious property acquisitions. Piece by piece, the puzzle revealed a vast network of corruption, contracts manipulated, competitors silenced, fortunes built on deception. Daniel, experienced in investigative work, was stunned by Elena's sharp legal mind. She didn't just notice patterns, she understood their weight. "You're not just exposing him," Daniel remarked one night, flipping through her notes. "You're mapping his entire empire." Elena's eyes hardened with purpose. "He told me people like me had a place in society." He was right. "My place is in the courtroom, not carrying trays." By the time they finished assembling the dossier, they had a weapon no lawyer, investor, or politician could ignore. Maxwell Harrington's empire looked solid on the outside, but Elena had uncovered its cracks. And she was ready to strike. Maxwell Harrington stood in his penthouse, swirling a glass of scotch as his investors laughed around him. The atmosphere was smug, decadent. A hidden security camera, installed by his own staff to monitor theft, quietly recorded every second. On the screen, Maxwell leaned forward, voice lowered but dripping with arrogance. "Gentlemen, the city housing project is ours. The councilman will release the permits once we deliver the consulting fee. It's all taken care of." Laughter erupted. Glasses clinked. No one in the room realized the camera had captured every damning word. 2 days later, Daniel slipped a USB drive across the library table. "We got it," he whispered. Footage straight from his own security system. Bribes on camera. Elena watched the video, her pulse steady, her face unreadable. Maxwell's arrogance practically filled the screen as he described how to divert millions meant for affordable housing. This, Daniel said, combined with your documents, will bury him. Elena leaned back, her eyes burning with quiet determination. Then Monday morning, the city will finally see Maxwell Harrington for who he really is. For Maxwell, it would be just another Monday. For Elena, it would be the day justice began. Monday morning, 6 a.m. Maxwell Harrington awoke to the shrill ring of his phone. Bleary-eyed, he answered, only to hear his lawyer's panicked voice. Maxwell, turn on the news. Now. Confused, he stumbled into his living room, flicking on the giant flat screen. His heart nearly stopped. Splashed across the morning broadcast was his own image, seated in the penthouse, glass of scotch in hand, openly discussing bribes for city contracts. Beneath the video rolled a headline in bold red letters. Billionaire's empire built on corruption, exclusive evidence reveals fraud and bribery network. Maxwell's legs gave out, dropping him into the leather sofa. Reporters detailed fraudulent permits, rigged auctions, and years of insider trading, all meticulously mapped with documents, ledgers, and video recordings. Each accusation was matched with proof. His phone buzzed non-stop. The mayor distanced himself immediately. I cannot be associated with Mr. Harrington's practices. Investors demanded withdrawals. His bank froze accounts pending federal review. Maxwell shouted into the empty room, impossible. Who could have done this? But even as denial filled his throat, the answer clawed at his mind. The waitress. The one he mocked for studying law. Elena Johnson. And she was nowhere near finished. By noon, Maxwell Harrington's empire was in freefall. His accounts frozen, contracts cancelled, and partners abandoning him on live television. Alone in his penthouse, he sat trembling as federal agents gathered outside the gates. Then the intercom buzzed. Mr. Harrington, a calm female voice said. It's Elena Johnson. I believe you left something behind. His chest tightened. Moments later, Elena stepped into the grand room where she once cleared plates in silence. She wore a simple blazer, her law books now carried in a sleek briefcase. She placed a folded newspaper on his desk, the front page showing Maxwell's face beside the damning headline. You planned this, he whispered hoarsely. Elena's voice was steady, precise. No, Mr. Harrington. I prepared. And you gave me everything I needed. Every careless document, every whispered deal, every insult. She leaned closer, eyes locked on his. You told me people like me had a place in society. You were right. My place is in the courtroom. Yours is in prison. As federal agents entered, Maxwell slumped in defeat. Elena walked out into the sunlight, free at last from his shadow. Justice wasn't loud. Justice was meticulous. And now, it was complete.